Hello everyone, William here, one of the VCT Pacific casters out here in Seoul, South Korea, and we are back with another episode of Scoped In, where we will be taking a closer look at some of the things that have happened in recent weeks of VCT Pacific. Now, kickoff just started, and of course, it's also just about to end, as it is a pretty short tournament, and we've already had some very interesting looks. First of all, I would like to say, I think VCT Pacific mostly delivering up to the expectations and hype that a lot of us had, although maybe some of the teams and rosters were like, okay, maybe they still do need a little bit more time to warm up. And unfortunately, for some of the teams, they will actually have all the time they would want all the way until Stage 1 begins later in the spring. But out of the teams that are remaining, which hasn't really changed much since 2023, of course, it's our favorite team, the reigning VCT Pacific champions, Paper Rex, that brings out an interesting look on Sunset. So as we get started, you're already taking a look at the Asian composition, I'm sure, on the left side of your screens, and we are going to see that it is Paper Rex running no duelist, which is a bit of a shocker because Paper Rex is obviously known for W gaming. They like to run a lot of duelists. They like to really keep up the speed. They're never letting their foot off the pedal, etc., etc., etc. So that already had a lot of us scratching our heads, and maybe even Gen G as well. Something on the get-go, that's not as shocking. He was starting to play the Breach last year on Fracture. He was playing the get-go on Sunset at the Africa TV Valorant League as well during the offseason. So, that's not out of the ordinary per se. They're trying to make him more flexible. But, running basically Devi on the Sage, and it's not because it's Devi playing the Sage, which I think is completely reasonable and fine and not exactly that new, but it's the fact that they don't have a traditional Sentinel like Cypher that we've seen getting a lot of use on this map, and then they don't have any duelists. Now, I've seen some people speculate maybe this is because they're starting on the defense side. Maybe they have some slight variations. And while Paper Rex is a team where I would not be surprised if that was the case, given how flexible they are and how many variants they have in their own little play style, I'm actually starting to think that that's not the case. And the reason I think so is because they're not the only team that's experimenting with something like this. We're actually starting to see a lot of other teams around the world that are experimenting with non-dive compositions. And I say non-dive because, mostly strictly because of Loud, who's using the Phoenix on some of their maps. And while Phoenix is a duelist, he's not what we would commonly think of as the duelist, where you're able to dive in and create space by actually moving into a position. So examples of that would obviously be Jet, who is kind of the trademark of duelists, but Ray's also very well known for doing that. And even Neon, in a different way, is able to do that, right? You can put up the fast lane, or even with it or not, you can go for your sprint, you can go for the slide, and create a wider angle than most other agents instantly to create space, to create crossfires, etc., etc. And in Valorant, because we started by having dive agents like Jet, we've always kind of associated entry and duelist with dive, which is why a lot of people felt things like Phoenix or Yoru, and now, the Reynas and the ISOs, they don't feel as much like a duelist, and they don't really fill the dive role, and obviously Reyna's in a kind of entirely different category as well. They fill the whole duelist role in that they want to take fights, and they get a lot of advantages by taking fights. Either they know how to take an advantageous fight, or they can roll off of it like an ISO or a Reyna. And now we're starting to see these compositions where they're just foregoing dive. And at that point, then you really start to wonder, do I need a duelist, right? And you can really slot in a little bit more of a variance in your compositions based on what other utility you would like. So let's take a look at the pistol round first, because we're going to actually see, we'll loop back to this, but I believe pistol rounds are going to be very important for compositions like this. But first of all, Gen G coming up with a relatively reasonable. So first of all, Gen G comes with their own variation of what I would consider to be kind of the meta starting point at the moment, right? Viper's still very strong. You have the double controller where Omen adds a little bit more flexibility. You're going with a single initiator. They're going with the Sky, which I think a lot of teams are maybe still on the fence about. But then you have the Cypher and the Raze. Okay, pretty reasonable for a Sunset composition. They're going to start with a camera here, and they are stacked towards the B side. But they do have the toxic screen on A should they ever wish to rotate. And obviously that can start some mental conditioning for future rounds as well. Meanwhile, Paper Rex, it's a 3-2 split. They've completely ignored mid, and they just have two people on A who can gather some info, but really do a lot of delay should there be a push into A. And both of these agents, Gecko and Omen, they have ways to really create that elastic defense where they can delay and then step back, right? And then you can throw out another piece of utility, step back. The same can be said for Omen. You can put up a smoke, delay, paranoia, and then back out over here and still hold that angle where you're really just slowing things down until your backup arrives. On the B side, right, you have KO who can provide a lot of support from long range onto either site with things like the 0 point. You can do a lot of, highly thrown flash drives as well to support from long range. And then you've got the Sage, again, really good at delaying. And you've got the Viper, pretty decent at delaying. So we're starting to see a pattern here.
It's definitely a bit of a head scratcher.
So Cam goes out immediately as it is set up in a very default position on the window into Cinema. But it's a mid push out from Gen G. So I'm going to pause right here as that snakebite lands. First of all, great lineup. It makes use of the cyber cage as well. So they kind of have to let you know if they were inside the cyber cage of either exiting or just sitting in the snakebite and probably getting absolutely destroyed. And then we should note that what else did Gen G use? They used a guiding light earlier in mid, and then they've used the Trailblazer, which we see on our screens right here. They've used a Paranoia to fully clear the left side of market because the Trailblazer tried to dive into the cyber cage and really clear out that angle. And then they've already used their smokes as well, right? So Karon has used both of his smokes. The Paranoia on the UI will soon disappear because it was just launched. That is pretty... Oh, and a snakebite, right? So that's pretty much the bulk of all the utility that they bought on a pistol round. So what you have left is you're going to have one cyber cage left, and then you have the poison cloud, and that's really about it because you started with one snakebite poison cloud for Munchkin. You've got the half armor. You'll get you won't get the guiding light back. Sorry, that's old habits. And then you have paint shells. So you're really hoping that this gets you something, that this gets you some advantage. Meanwhile, what did Paper Rex use? Well, the 0 point early thrown at a high angle to check for the ace side. This is going to be combined with the one way, and it actually works out entirely for Paper Rex because they see this push onto market, and the 0 point will land right on a timing where they're going to want to start to push out and clear out, right? Make sure that this is the main force. Being actually quite thorough considering it's the pistol round. Outside of that, we did see Divide throw a slow orb right here. So they're a little bit gunked up on the entry into market, and you're about to see Divide throw the second one as well to really buy time. Otherwise, you're not really using much. So you've really just used 2 slow orbs, and that's about it, right? You haven't really spent any credits on it. So you've just spent 400 credits, and that's it. And then you still have the wall, so Divide's not buying the armor either.
Say on Sunset, the Sage walls are
so he actually throws the second orb to make sure they can't get into the site easily, which is going to give time for him and 2 of his teammates to re-enter into B site. During all of this, they've already checked with the 0 point. Nobody's there. It's the pistol round. You saw this util. So the rotate begins over from the A side. So they Gen G, they will get through the initial slow orb at the entry point, but now they're going to have to wade through this, so they can't go. Oh, sorry, my arm freaked out there, but they're going to have to wade through this slow orb here to get into the site. That has been delayed. You still got your toxic screen. It's delaying the entry into main, and Paper Rex is going to have the setup that they want. So they've already filled backside. Now we see the wall come up as well on top of the smoke. So once again, very well communicated. Okay, smoke off the site. Now, would you argue that it's the best smoke to try to hold from defense? Maybe not, but then you're putting up the Sage wall anyway, and this creates a little pocket that you can aim down from as well. Again, a lot more delay, especially on the pistol round. Divide's going to actually take quite a beating as Forsaken takes out Munchkin over by main. But all in all, I mean, this wall is doing its job, right? Because first of all, you scared them that you're on top of the wall. Second, they just had to use a lot of bullets to try to break through it. And even once they do, there's still a lot of space left around the smokes. You don't really know where everyone is, and the pinch hasn't quite happened because the entry from main has not arrived. And during all of that, I just want to note, while Forsaken does get that kill into Munchkin, it was 2 people holding the back corner as well. So you're really just saying you will not enter here and you will not enter here until backup arrives. That's not a lot of space for Gen G to work with. And again, reminder, they've used pretty much all of their utility.
The get the pickup onto Munchkin.
Okay, so the paint shells are thrown actually to help. But during all of that, let's play this in real time, because look at the timing of assistance from Monyet. The Paranoia is also going to come in right here to make sure that they're keeping that space. So what that does, first of all, I think it's a great paint shell from Texture, right? It's thrown at this angle so that it pushes Devi further back. Devi has to back off from there, which allows the main force to enter in from Market. But Paper Rex, they have their own reaction with the Paranoia. So nobody's really taking control of the space. And at the end of the day, it's Paper Rex who still holds it because they still hold this back corner. So the entry from Market is really just joining up, and now all the fights have to happen right here, right? From backside all the way into B main. And Paper X have got him right where they wanted. They're actually going to win out a lot of the duels. The Wingman's going to push through as well. The smoke was used earlier by Monyet as well, again, to hold the back of sight. And at the end of the day, it's a 2v1. So a really good retake with the pistols, but very interesting theme here that they're just not going to use their utility early. Now, one of the other things that we're going to see continue to happen throughout this map is Forsaken is going to buy the Outlaw whenever he thinks there's a good shot at it, and he is going to make great use of it. So in this round, this is the second round. It's the anti-eco, so they put up the wall in mid because that's going to get a lot of value. And then they don't see any reaction. So they actually have Forsaken aiming down from here. He'll do it in the next round again. And then he rotates over, and he's going to find a brilliant collat and a third kill as well. Spike down, Outlaw Value found. Now this is round 5. Here's another round where Paper X correctly identifies that Genji's credits are weak, and the Outlaw will just get an easy 2 kills. And part of the advantage they gain from this is obviously the Outlaw, right? You're on defense. If you know that the opponents are going to ping pong on their creds, then the Outlaw is going to get you great value. So this round 6 is right after a timeout, and not only was there a timeout, but Genji has 2 crucial ultimates that can help them break into the site. You've got the Seekers, and you've got the Showstopper. And so Paper X, they've kind of emptied both sites, and they're already closing in on the map, right? I mean, they have the null command, but they don't want to try to take the risk on the timing. They could always use that for the retake. And they keep the screen up here to delay whatever they can. And they've already closed up pretty much the map entirely.
The push it on elbow.
I'm scared about this elbow.
Truly, but look.
Munchkin actually gets a crazy timing here to hide away. Because Munchkin does think something's a little weird, right? You're not seeing any reaction from elbow. You're not really seeing any further reaction other than the 0 point. Things are getting a little iffy. Now, the null command just comes out because Paper X is thinking, we've already pinched in, right? So they have to go for an execute. So what Forsaken is doing here is saying, all right, since we have their flank, we don't actually want to give them the opportunity to use the Seekers and the Showstopper to push into sight and then take over all of defensive spawn and basically flip the map on its head. So he uses a null command, which I think is really good timing.
Might get the best sandwich position of his life.
Now, at the end of the day, Munchkin does stabilize for 2 kills, but now they're pretty much trapped. Devaya has a great boost up, which, I mean, he uses it right behind the wall, and it could be used for either reason. So it works out. I mean, people are going to get used to that if Devaya keeps doing it, but it's similar to if you use the updraft to peek out from above, etc. It's just, you're kind of creating another 50-50. And the null command just ends in time for Texture to pick up the Showstopper. So he will get the round. But here's the thing, is that Paper X is up now 4-2. They have the creds to mostly all buy back full buys. And they only used the null command. Whereas Genji, had to use the Showstopper, which was going to be a big thing on helping them break into the site. And they've dropped all but 1 weapon. Now we go into the next round. Once again, you still have the Seekers, but no Showstopper. And so Paper X is seemingly going to just ditch this whole area, right? They don't want to have to deal with the Rays just like blasting through and then taking out whoever's hiding an elbow. So I like this. Whenever the opponents are on a weak buy, they'll try to see if they can bait them in, or if they are on, a bonus or something like that, they'll try to double stack elbow, things like that. But otherwise, they generally keep this alley pretty open. So correctly double blast pack in.
Just
Paper X
no, they're really
has
pushing
backed
up into
out.
this.
The Seekers
They're
are
not
used
slowing down.
immediately.
They're starting to
Paper
flash
X just
so
holding
it is a
far,
momentum
far
right now for
away
Gen
from
G.
it.
They wanna get a
They've
quick
already
start
kind
on
of
this
checked
post
for a
five
lurk on
close,
B
and
main.
they wanna position
Nothing
for
from
that
there. And now they're
for the
moving
goods
all the way
of
in
this,
for a
as I
retake.
mentioned, post plan, and save up as
Forsaken
much
does have an
utility for
Outlaw
when
with
Paper
no
X
armor,
tries to come
so
into the
it's a
site.
bit of an aggressive buy-in, and the operator for something as well. But look at how this retake begins. I mean, you've got the slow orb and the one-way here, so it entirely negates most of the reinforcements that can happen coming in from A main around the side, right? I mean, sure, like Texture could try to peek out here, but at best he's getting one kill. And then you're throwing the Dizzy high up onto the site. You throw the Paranoia deep into the site as well. Now, I will argue that Lakia probably shouldn't have peeked out as the Cyber Cage is ending. Probably should have taken a safer angle. But at the end of the day, he does fall. At least 4 people. Texture's still out of the fight, by the way. He cannot provide support. So they even put up the wall because they just don't want to have to deal with that. They've already cleared out this entry point. So basically, they now just have to deal with here, this corner, and this corner. Paper X is very well aware of this. So you can already see that was actually a really good time to stop the stream to show you a nice screenshot of it. So you've got Wingman going into the smoke. So that part's covered. You've got someone to react on it. And then if we let this play out, you've got something jumping to peek around this corner so that Devi can come around and swing on it. Mindfreak's still watching the flank. You've got Monette still watching the smoke. And you've got Forsaken watching this side. So you've got somebody watching literally every possible angle that they would get attacked from with safety nets. So Wingman gets the stun. That's actually a jump into the smoke because of the stun. Monette and Forsaken will go in together, but Monette will pick up the double kill. And then Texture's just been, I mean, he's just been denied the opportunity to fight here. So because of that previous round, which went so well, Forsaken's Outlaw is now actually going to find much more value again because they are on another eco round. So once again, because the enemy's on an eco round, this time it's the early wall and mid. That way they don't have to worry about it. So Paper X are really just working with the enemy's economy every single round. You've got the operator still to watch B main. You've planted Mindfreak there as a safety net. And then you're just backing out. You're not flooding the site. You don't want to get overwhelmed because the only way this Gen G squad in composition is getting into the site. And mind you, I think this is a good read on Gen G as well as a team because Gen G has been playing very exec heavy, set play heavy games, right? And they've been showing a lot of their hand on it too. So Paper X just identifying this is how a lot of the Korean teams play. This is how Gen G is going to play. It's head coach solo. It's HSK. It's all of these Korean players who have been on Korean teams before. We know how to counter this.
Of what's about to happen. That is why Devi as well as Monette are playing that far back on A site.
And again, if this is a full commitment of like majority of the players of Gen G,
Monette even gets the first peek over the smokes.
The from Device is gonna stop them.
There's another thing to consider, which I don't think is necessarily the reason they won, but also the Sage provides like extra ways that they could change elevation, right? So yeah, I mean, you could do the same thing with Jet, but now you always kind of have to worry about the Sage while being somewhere, and then the Omen can continue to be on top of boxes as well. It's just more angles that you have to check, and it negates a lot of these toxic screens, etc. The Paranoia, once again, to cut off backup, right? So the Paranoia makes sure that they can't all get in here. That gives Devi a chance to sneak into the box. Gates gets an advantageous angle.
It's a complete and utter disaster when
And then the screen goes down and the round is over. So once again, Paper X empties the A site. So far what we've seen is pretty much, we saw 2 rounds, I believe, where they were trying to hold A, right? Once with the Outlaw and then once with that double stack onto Elbow. And then outside of that, they're kind of just letting A get taken over, right? Because they know that for Gen G to feel comfortable taking a site, they're going to have to use so much utility. You'll probably want to use at least 1 Guiding Light, if not 2, maybe a Trailblazer. You're probably using your double blast packs in. You're going to want to use your smokes. And then after that, you're going to have to back out into these narrow choke points. Or you're going to have to really just flood the site, at which point you've got the KO Molly, you've got the Gecko Molly, you've got the Slow Orb, you got the Viper Molly. I mean, those corners are getting cleared. So Paper X just says our comp can get back into the site very easily. We can block off the choke points back into A, so we can really deny the post plant. And even on B, they're like, as long as we just hold back sight, which we have, again, many ways to do so with all the mollies and the smokes and all the delay tools, then we can go for the retakes. So this time, once again, they're emptying A, and they're going to go for another quick clear towards mid to really pinch up the map. So they're going to use Thrash, and you have the other ultimates as well. On the side of Paper X, as the casters just mentioned, so early Thrash, you send the smoke to cover off tiles, so you only have to worry about that. The Paranoia even used to push out of B main. Cinema's taken over, and basically the entire left side of the map is taken over. Now, the difference is Meteor is on the lurk, so technically Gen G knows that this has happened, right? Last time they kind of found out late. They still ended up getting the round thanks to Texture, but Paper X, they've cleared all that out, and they say, okay, well, there's no one like trying to get a timing right into B, so we're just going to rotate all the way back over. Now, Paper X has gathered all the way through because they just decide to rotate immediately. They have all these lineups. They throw the Dizzy, they throw the Wingman to check close, they throw the Fragment to disrupt the plant. They're even going to throw another Flash Drive after the Dizzy. Now, the counter Paranoia comes out, which actually saves Lakia pretty much. But the Thrash is still going to push them back, which gives Devi the space to push forward and put up the wall against A main. Now, Texture does pick up a kill, but at the end of the day, Gen G doesn't feel safe because they don't know if anyone's coming all the way from backside. And they know, Gen G knows, that they only have 3 people near the site. So if one person starts sticking the plant, it's a 2v4. So they're trying to wait for another pick. Now, Paper X is going to try to go for the rest, trying to get some sort of reaction here. Now, what reaction they do get is actually Munchkin breaks this wall. So now Paper X has to worry a little bit about the gap in the wall. And Monyet dies in that process. A little bit unfortunate. But the Guiding Light, not really doing that much. The Toxic Screen is out, so that can cover the backs of Paper X just a bit. During all this, Munchkin has rotated all the way towards Elbow.
Not gonna allow them to push up just
now,
yet
Something still launching the flank. Now, Meteor's going to make it all the way through spawn. But as Texture starts to go for the trade, so does Devi. And Munchkin gets picked off, which starts the trouble for Gen G. Because Munchkin has rotated and he gets picked off, Gen G still can't comfortably push in through, because otherwise Texture would basically be making himself fight like a 1vx fight. They're still waiting for Meteor to help clear out this corner. And so Gen G's really just saying, like, Meteor's got to come save the day. And I don't mind that so much because Meteor is here. But the very unfortunate thing happens that Texture basically, the comms don't quite seem to be there, or the timing, where Texture has turned his eye away to see if anyone is rotating in from Paper X. And during all of that, Something has now crept up to be able to stare into the site.
No plan on the spike just yet. Numbers still favoring the Korean
And
side,
that takes down the spike. And now you're
little bit.
really not looking good with the numbers. Something pushes up close. He hears it, but he's not aware of the shorty. And then it's just a swing out because Something has gotten into the site.
He's out in the open field, man. Out to...
But again, the point is Paper X has so much faith in their delay. I mean, if it wasn't for Meteor flanking all the way around, I don't think Gen G even had a shot at this round. Because at the end of the day, Paper X could have, I mean, they could have just kept pushing, slow creeping 1 kill at a time all the way through. Now, Texture could have, had some wins, and Gen G, yeah, Munchkin could have still held here, and Texture just holding here on the angle, and you're trusting that you're going to win the fights until Meteor comes. But the point of the matter is they thought they would be able to take the site over, but Paper X has all these liners to push you back, and you don't have that much else to push them back. Your Paranoia got used earlier, but it was countered out by the Thrash, so you're not gaining any more space. So anytime you go into the site, you're kind of trapped either in the site or, once again, in the extremities where you have to go through the choke points. Same thing with B. Anytime you take the site, they're not really taking back site. Paper X is making sure of that. So either you are stuck here trying to just go for fights, or you might get the plant, but you're going to have to exit the site. And Paper X just forces that with their utility.
And of course, you've also...
So going into round 17, Paper X had just used a timeout. And then they're going to start stacking onto the A side. Now, I don't know, obviously, exactly what was said, but I can only imagine what was said was probably something along the lines of, with the utility we have and the composition we have, it's very hard for them to anchor on A. And this is something you saw a little bit of, I believe, from Loud on that Ascent as well, where they're playing the Phoenix, right? The util combos they have makes it very difficult to try to anchor solo on the site. The additional thing that Paper Rex does, and I think Ascent has variations of this as well, because they also have a composition with a lot of mollies, etc., is you're closing off potential backup. So it's either you try to just flood the site as defense, and even then, the Ito combos are probably very good, or you empty it, because if it's just one person anchored, they're either getting blown up by utility or the backups being closed off. It's like one or the other, and you're going to get the site overtaken. So we're going to see that here, where they do a little mini push and pull over by A and Tiles. They'll try to make some noise on to mid and market. They're just trying to tell them, like, yo, we're testing the waters with mid. And that forces Gen G into a default hold. It's so smart because part of this is the fact that Gen G and a lot of traditionally Korean teams don't like to deviate from the default on defense. It's one of the reasons why DRX started to have so much trouble on Haven defense after a certain point. And to a certain extent, the same sense on Ascent as well. While obviously DRX has had a great Ascent and their success rate is very good, what I'm trying to say is these maps where you're facing against these teams that don't like to take big risks, you just keep telling them, like, just that small bit is going to force them to hold the default.
There it is.
Now Charon's going to back out. They invest the paranoia early by taking over Tiles. The guiding light comes out from Lakia into mid, and that's going to tell them that no one's quite there, but it doesn't give them exact information, because that guiding light was popped here, and, like, maybe, especially with the paranoia, maybe the Omen's still here. We don't know how many people are following up on the paranoia on the A side, right? This is just a big old question mark. And then maybe they were hiding behind this wall. They're still ready to peek out. Same thing here. I mean, that guiding light still means that somebody has to come out and peek or keep their eye on there, because the spy cam is used for A, and the tripwires are used on A as well.
Because Meteor has this camera.
Eventually, only the Gecko was peeking out, right? Clears out the cam. So Karen's going to use a smoke, and it's going to call Meteor over. But the 0 point, while it gets shot down, the wingman is sent in to clear out close here on the screen. So the wingman is clearing out the close angles here. You've got the slow orb and the smoke coming out here, so no one can peek out from that smoke with a pop flash or anything like that.
Right now, as Charon is going to try to feed
And the Seekers are coming out, but then the Mosh is used too. So the Seekers aren't really getting you much value. Now, Charon has a good counter paranoia that should, in theory, buy him some time. But the wingman does tag onto him, chases him back, and eventually he's only going to get one kill. And Paper Rex just floods in, because at the end of the day, Gen G, now with the camera broken, has to be worried about this elbow. Now, Paper Rex doesn't know exactly where the trips are set up, but somebody, like, has to be worried about this part of the map. Even if the trip is here, like, maybe someone's going to be jumping out from here. You just never know. So with Lakia being held off, Meteor's going to come in to try to provide backup, but it's just a flood in from Paper Rex. You can't get the trades in time, and Meteor also goes down immediately. This partly works because Paper Rex also has the res, so they can go for a flood execute without a dive. Now, to iterate this point a bit further, there are some other games where we're seeing similar compositions. This is from VCT China Kickoff, Billy Gaming versus Wolves. Now, while Wolves does have a Jet, and they do have a Sova, it's not really like a Jet go in will set you up for every single possible kill, right? Because they still have a Cypher and a Killjoy, which in your head probably doesn't spell a lot of offensive utility to help clear out angles. Now, the Killjoy and Viper obviously always have had a very much success here on Icebox, a lot of success, and then you're good for the post-plant lineups, etc. But one of the things I noticed from the Wolves game is they come with a pistol specifically prepared for the attacking half. So they're going to set up, it all starts here. They set up this trapwire on their entry next to the barrier by green. So you can kind of feel safe about your flank. Meanwhile, the Cypher regroups over with Plex on the Viper, and they're going to start pushing mid as a double with the Poison Cloud. Now, because of the Poison Cloud, and because this is the pistol round, it's going to put pressure just like it often has in the past, where you have to worry about tube. Now, that Poison Cloud is also built in a way where you can get under tube through your own smoke. So that's exactly what they're going to do. And now look at the timing. The recon bolt is sent out. It pings as soon as it lands and starts pinging behind yellow and into sight. The double team from mid starts moving in. And they're checking you know, as many of the angles as they can as they're going in. They have their sights split, so one person will be, the Viper will be watching kitchen. Obviously, the Cypher is looking forward. But then YU, the Cypher, is going to put up a cyber cage here as Jet dashes in here. The idea being, especially in a pistol round, I mean, at best, you probably, unless you have the read, you probably have a 2-man stack on B. And usually it's going to be like one up here and maybe one down here, or one high-low on the B site, things like that. And they just pinch onto Yosemite. I mean, Yosemite just can't do anything. It's because you heard the dash. You know the Jet is here. They're going to be peeking out at some point. You're trying to figure out which fight do I take first because you just heard all these footsteps in the cyber cage and no one can provide backup. The site is overtaken. A nice kill from Knight, but he doesn't get to regain control of the site. And then you have the cyber cam watching Snowman. You still have this trip back here. You still got a turret to help watch the site or the flank. And you've basically filled in the site as well, where you can cover each other at various angles. Plix is hiding right under the bridge so he doesn't get spotted from above, so he can just watch the entry point in from mid. They're spamming away from the screen as the cyber cam gets taken out. That allows YU to retreat and join his teammates. And then Swarms popped a little early to make sure that they can't get in too fast. Here the dash, YU trying to get prepared for the Jet pushing. And YU's going to get one kill. Now Knight and YZ both get very nice kills, but you see the dash in. And then Coldfish just gets a sick double. Now, Billy gets some nice shots, which is why this got so close. But at the end of the day, you were pretty much guaranteed the plant here. Now, there's round 6 between this game where, okay, Billy started catch back up, right? They win their buy round and they're able to continue in a similar fashion as you would expect. Wolves don't exactly, I mean, they keep putting up their cyber utility, their Cypher utility to watch for the flanks. So they have a couple of cyber cages on things like on screens to try to delay as much as possible. But at the end of the day, the going gets a little tough. But on this round, what you see is there was an initial long-range duel where YZ is going to get a quick kill, but then during that chaos, we do see Spring jump in and get a close-range kill from on top of green, and then they just hold. Now, they've been chipped down by some utility, and there is an Outlaw on the other side. But now with the toxic screen, as they know that they've pushed them back, and you're suspecting that Billy will want to play long-range battle, they creep all the way up to the toxic screen. I mean, look at your mini-map. You've got the Cypher on site ready to plant, but they're not going to plant because what they're going to do is they're going to abuse the fact that they have been allowed to walk right up to the cusp of the site to start to swarm the site itself. So you hear the snake bite coming in and you're concerned. Okay, you hear the updraft as well. And you hear the updraft, you're like, oh, maybe they're up top. You saw one's elbow and then you just get pinched right away and the site's taken over. Coldfish, meanwhile, does get a... Where does he get that kill? Oh, Coldfish gets the kill at long range as it's a double against mid. So during this, you send the Jet up right as YU is pinching onto the site, see if they can find anyone. And then you're watching to see if anyone's providing coverage from Kitchen or 2. So instantly, just by numbers, Wolves now have control of the site. They've actually pushed him further out from Snowman. He's going to try to re-peek out. The spike does go down, but you got Plix there for the trade. And now suddenly, it's a 1v3. And Bear just had like no control over the rest of the map because he's been trying to creep up from the A side as he was still anchored outside of the A side to see if it ever became an A plant. So you just need that one round where you're able to creep up. Now, what you notice in a lot of these games where one side doesn't have like a strong dive comp or no dive at all is you probably shouldn't let them creep up for free. But why that happens so often is if teams try to play really proper, right? Or they're like, we don't want to give this econ advantage over things like that, which is all fair. I'm not saying that those are bad decisions, but it's this matter of you've got the rock, paper, scissors, right? So it's like, okay, well, if you want to play far back and you want to play default because you want to make sure you're getting the right info, etc., then they're just going to walk up. T1 used to do this all the time last year when they would start losing rounds, they would just cut noise and they would just walk up to site and then they would get the site for free. If you just able to do that with one round and then you're expecting you're either winning the pistol and the anti-eco or your first buy round, you're going to have a pretty decent half. Now, in this game, Billy actually, I think, lets a lot of rounds that they probably shouldn't have get away from them. So Wolves has a good start. But if you look at the later half of this map, okay, it's a push down mid, right, on the bonus here from Wolves. Look at all this utility that's set up on A that you just do not need to be there for. You've got the cyber cam to help for a retake. You've got trips to make sure that you know if they're coming into site and you know if they're taking over more space. Why do you have that trip there? Because you're going to push out from mid. And then you got the nanoswarms to delay. You've got a nanoswarm here to delay as well. And then they're just going to charge on out of the site. And they do this. They send the recon deep into belt as well, and because no one's there, the Silva's going to actually rotate back out to group up with his team. You've still got Plix holding on to Snowman. You've taken over entire mid control because you took down the KJ. And now you can just all focus on this B site, because with that aggressive push, you've put a turret down in mid, so you know no one's coming mid. You know no one's at A because you pushed out early and you've still got all that utility. So even though it's a bonus, you actually upgraded one of your weapons, and you've got a 5-man stack on B. And Wolves are just free to do this every round that they want. The defense becomes so easy. And it's a nightmare for Billy to try to figure out, because with a double controller, it's not... You can't clear all this utility out very easily. But you need to at some point. So you need to figure out a way to do that, or pressure mid with something like the Cascades, etc., to shake up the defense. But they just don't find the answer. And at the end of the day, I mean, Wolves also just hitting some really nice shots. They have great players. So at the end of the day, Wolves is a stronger team. But these are the kind of things you're going to start to see with teams that bring out comps that have no dive or very little dive, right? You just have the dive where it's going to gain you a little bit more space, but your entire execute or retake doesn't revolve around the dive itself. So now that we've seen the advantages of these types of compositions that have little to no dive, the question becomes, how do you counter it? Now, when I say little to no dive, again, I'm really just saying these are compositions that don't revolve around the dive, right? You're not setting up this elaborate exec that has to have something like the tailwind. You can have the tailwind like we saw with Wolves, but that's not the centric point of your composition. We talked about how maybe you only focus on winning a minimum number of rounds on one side of the map, right? So you just have like a really good pistol prepared, things like that. So how do you counter this? There are some options. I mean, in my head, I'm thinking maybe the double duelist can actually be good for it as well, where you can really just go harder in the paint, really force the more aggressive fights, and most importantly, kind of push the starting line of scrimmage back even further from the non-dive composition, right? That way, they're not going to have the starting line that they want. They're not going to be set up in the angles and the utility timings that they would want. That disrupts their game plan just a little bit. Or you can maybe have a bit more tempo where you're really drawing out all this delay utility so that, again, they don't have it prepared when they want to actually fight you, so they can't defend or attack the hill they choose to die on. We'll have to wait and see which teams come up with the right opposition. But even amongst the different regions we're exploring, right? So examples like Paper Rex, Wolves in VCT China, Loud in VCT Americas, we're seeing different variations and interpretations of this as well. So maybe some or all of these teams will make it to Madrid, and we'll see those styles clash amongst themselves and see if one has a clear advantage over the other. All in all, I think we're in for a treat for the 2024 meta evolution, because this style isn't going to suit everyone. So I think the introduction of this style is going to start to create just more variable counterpoints amongst different teams and different regions. Let me know down in the comments below what you think as well. Do you think that this style is here to stay? Do you think it's going to just become the meta pick on some of these maps? Are you even excited for this style of gameplay to be introduced into VCT? Let me know, and we'll be back next week to cover more topics from VCT Pacific.